the biggest entrepreneur platform on the planet. This is Business Rockstars.
This is Business Rockstars. I'm Mark Lack, and joining us is a very special guest. We've got Juan Banos in the house, and he's the CEO of the BR Companies. Welcome on the show, brother. Good to have you.
Thanks, man. I'm so grateful to be here, man. Thanks for having me. I just can't believe it. It's been 10 years since I've known you and watching your journey, and now we're here, so I just can't express my gratitude, man. Thank you.
You've got the BR Companies meets the BR Business Rockstars.
Right.
Finally, the two meet. So, dude, you've got so much going on. You've got your primary business, but you guys are expanding, you're acquiring other companies. So, in your words, what are you guys doing?
Gosh, well, you know what? My platform is the world of building, right? So we started as a construction company, right? Evolving into more of like a enterprise-like business now. And to dumb it down, we're all things building, right? So in our world, in our space, that world of building, there's generic design, construction, energy, facilities, and tech. And under that umbrella, you basically can do all things building. You know, this space is large and it needs to be championed. So long story short, construction company started by immigrant parents and evolving into enterprise-like business, hoping to have a real estate arm and all kinds of fun stuff coming, man.
So it's a family business,
yes,
right?
Sir.
And I know you've got your siblings are involved with you guys,
Yes.
which is really cool. I think family businesses are really special. And I think the fact that what you're going to share in your story, you've taken it from the small little business that it was with your siblings, and you've grown it to what it is today, on track, right? On track
Yes.
to do $100 million, which is
That's
absolutely insane.
That's the
I'm
mark.
so proud of you guys that you've created that. But take us back to the beginning, because I like to, on the show, not just talk about success and how others, the viewers, can achieve success with business.
Yeah.
But I like to kind of humble you and bring you back to the beginning, because I know a little bit about your story.
Sure.
You didn't always have, the on track for a $100 million business. Why don't you take us back to the beginning?
Yeah, no, I guess I could start with just, my parents were immigrants. I think they built a decent business. My dad was from Spain, Murcia, exact, and my mom was from Jalisco, Mexico. And they immigrated to the U.S. about 85, and he was in the world of building back in Spain. So, long story short, he started back up here and did pretty well. I mean, he built a unique business, but he was all things to his business, right? I mean, he's the invoice guy, he's the marketing guy, he's the get it done guy.
Wearing every hat.
Wearing every single hat, man. And, I love that about him. But he did it well. He kept it relatively small and safe for us, right? So that we can have a decent life. And I can't sit here today and say that, we started from the bottom there. The story where we started from the bottom is actually fast forward to where we lost him in 2009, so he died, and the business died with him. But what we weren't going to let die was his legacy, right? So it's 2009, and I'm studying to be a lawyer with one of my mentors, and he brings me in the office, and he knew I kind of had that business brain, and he suggested that I go work for the family business and take the entrepreneurial spirit and see if we can make things happen. And I'm like, man, that's not what I want to do. There's nothing sexy about construction for me, man. I don't want to be in that space. Yeah. And he basically said, look, you're not going to be a good lawyer. you may as well be a good businessman, be good at what you are, and you're going to need lawyers. And he was right. But so we kicked off, man, and it was just one foot in front of the other, and survival mode, right? So although we had a really nice life for a while he was alive, there was definitely a few-year period, and really almost a decade of just survival, right? We don't know what we're doing. I'm 20 years old. I'm in this space of like, this is not business. This is construction. This is not where you transact. Well, little did I know, there is a lot of transactions in that space. You're doing everything business. You're building relationships. You're monetizing. You're building a business. You're building a brand. You're marketing. So, we quickly realized that we've got something here. And I think what motivated me, I think I channeled his death maybe instead of it being negative to, and knowing that I was so unappreciative to, hey, you know what? Now I've got to put my head down and make this happen, right? So I think that fueled me to just say, hey, let's start growing this thing.
But you did
to
it with
what
your
it is now.
siblings, which I think is what is,
Yes.
most people would say, don't get in business with your family or your friends.
Right.
But you've done it with your brothers, your sister. Like, how has that worked out? How has it been with family?
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
Did they all
You know,
want to get in it too when it started?
You always hear that, right? Don't
Yeah.
do business with your family or friends. And I just completely disagree with it. So long as you can have that one conversation where you need high emotional intelligence to say what is the chair you're going to serve for the benefit of the business, right? So we have to kind of put our emotions aside and say, what is it that we're going to do? And we have a highly emotionally intelligent group of siblings, I guess, if you will, to be able to have that conversation. I can't lie and say it wasn't hard at the beginning, right? I'm,
Yeah.
I'm basically
When you're
the
figuring it all
youngest
out.
guy, yeah. So, but we definitely got there. We got it quick, and you know, the beauty of it is the trust is there, right? So if you can work with people you know and love and trust, and you're very clear on the expectation, then you can do some amazing things. So I'm very grateful for them.
I think the two hardest things in business are starting a business and scaling a business.
Yes.
Now, you said you didn't technically have to fully start it because it was there was some foundation in place.
Sure.
But you did what I would consider the other hardest part, which is you've scaled it tremendously to tens of millions of dollars in annual revenue. What has been one of the biggest lessons for scaling?
Well, when you're scaling a business and you're in survival mode, you don't know what you're doing. I mean, being 100% vulnerable, where you didn't have the technical expertise of knowing how to scale a business.
You hadn't done it
things
before.
Things just start happening, right? You just start hiring people out of impulse. You just start saying yes to everything. So I think there comes a moment where you actually have to really create the structure of your business and say, okay, look, we've got something here. Let's get organized. Let's create an accountability chart. Let's create process and systems and workflows. And maybe that'll help us put this more on a recurring type of revenue model. And that's what we did. So when you're scaling a business, you know, what I found out quickly was you really need to know the how piece of your business, right? Business is, what do you do? How do you do it? Who do you do it for? Dumb it down to that, right? But that how piece is your business operations, right? What is your platform? What's your infrastructure? Your business functions the way it's designed to function, right? So I think that's very important to look at, and people don't look at that, right? They look at the technical piece. It's, oh man, in our world, it's construction, so you focus more on the project than you do on the business, and you'll never scale that way.
And you've said a lot of the businesses that you've actually acquired and worked with and rolled up have been companies that knew construction, but they didn't know business. They didn't know
Exactly right.
operations and systems. And that's one of the things you said that's made your company so, I guess, quick to grow, is you not only understood projects and construction, but you understood business, operations, and systems. And so you're actually able to bring other companies in that are struggling
Yes.
to help them grow. Talk to us about that. What does that look like? Why are you acquiring other businesses instead of just growing your own?
Yeah, well, personally, remember, it goes back to the story of I didn't want to be in this business because I wanted to be more the business. So I said, okay, well, I still have no interest in being a contractor, right? I want to bring the business element to this business. So we drew a hard line in the sand and said, hey, look, we're going to focus just as much on the business as we are on the technicalities, the projects, the service that we're providing, right? And that made a huge difference. So what we've realized, and I use the term blue collar meets business at BR, right? And that's what we're doing right now. That's how we're scaling the business, because in this space that so desperately needs to be championed, and we'll talk about that in a minute, businesses are so focused on the technicality and the projects. And they're dying. I mean, these are people, you know, your age and my age that are out there trying to be electricians. So by design, they're great electricians. By default, they become business people, right? Because you didn't sign up for that. You signed up to understand code and compliance and wiring and bolts and nuts, but you didn't sign up to understand marketing and operations and workflows and process.
So they're great as an electrician, but they're not great as a business owner.
Exactly, right? And that's an ego bullet. You know, you have to realize that and say, hey, look, if I did focus more on my business, maybe I could scale, but they'll eventually hit a wall, right? And some thresholds are 500,000 in gross revenue, some are 3 million. There's different walls that these people can hit based on their ability to do all things.
What
right?
are you looking for in those companies, though? When you go into, you know, roll a company up and acquire them, is there something specifically you're looking for? Like, how do you know which ones you want versus that you don't want?
You know, people, cultural alignment, period, right? Because I'm not going to compromise our culture. Right now, for us and our scalability, it's alignment and speed, period. I don't care if you're the guy pushing the broom in the warehouse or the president of the company. If you're not aligned and you can't keep up, then we're out. And that's just us right now, right? Based on our projections and based on what we're doing for growth. So we always look at the people. Because unfortunately, when you're doing M&As in a blue collar space, we're not bankers, man. You know, this is not Wall Street. You know, people, I'll tell people, we've got this whole M&A due diligence template on doing what? In construction? I go, yeah. You know, we're going to treat, this is real businesses. If you filed with the Secretary of State, you're incorporated, you're a real business, right? So don't neglect that. So what we do is we handle it seriously, and we let them know that we're going to scale your business that way, right? Because they so desperately need it. And what we find is when we align with the right people, I can't monetize. Look, yes, there's growth. There's revenue. We've taken businesses 3x, 4x, 5x. The goal is always to 10x every business that we work with. But you can't monetize the feeling of somebody saying, hey, Juan, man, I was able to go to my kid's game this weekend now because I didn't have to work. Like,
they got their time back.
Like invoices are now processed through a whole different system.
Yeah.
And you just go, wow, how often is this happening? Well, that space is massive, right? This space represents about 7% of the global workforce, which is almost, shy of 1 billion people, right? The global GDP spend it's $10 trillion. So I said, look, that to me is business. I can get behind that space.
A lot of
right?
opportunity.
So we start there, right? So I said, let's take this cool construction company, let's build an enterprise, let's create a platform and a brand that we can scale and we can align with wonderful people, help them grow their businesses, and have fun while we do it.
So I want to shift gears. I love everything you're saying. I want to go back to a question that I wanted to ask earlier, and that is, do you think you've got a competitive advantage being a business owner in America coming from an immigrant family?
Yes, because everything's stacked up against you to start with. I do think, some of the people that, have things handed off for them, maybe they just don't appreciate it. They're not as grateful as they should be. You and I have had this conversation quite
many
a bit.
times, yeah.
But I do think when you have certain things stacked up against you, or you go through certain things that you don't know until you fail, right? You can hear your mentors tell you, like, let me tell you what I did wrong so you don't do it. And that's great and
You
dandy.
can read it in a book.
You can read it and you can say, but until you go through it, you won't understand the real of it, right? So for us, I think, if you're, immigrant parents that did not speak the language. My mom did a little bit because she was an airline stewardess, so she had to. But my father, he took that contractor state license board test, not knowing a lick of English, right? He had like a photographic memory and just tied like a word to an answer, and he did it. So everything was stacked up against him, right? No money, doesn't speak the language, doesn't understand the culture, the dynamic. And I think with that, you kind of use that as fuel to say, okay, let's get started,
Do you think that it's provided more hunger? Because one of the things that, the billionaires, the celebrities, some of the most well-known entrepreneurs in the world have sat in the same chair as you, Damon John from Shark Tank. Some of the biggest entrepreneurs have sat right where you are, and they've all said that you got to be hungry. You've got to have a hunger to want to succeed. And do you feel like that's something that you've always had? Have you always been hungry for business? You were going to be an attorney. I just want to know, have you always been hungry?
I've always been hungry to prove a point, right?
Okay.
When somebody tells me no, it's always like, what, you can't tell me no, right? So remember, I grew up with the name Juan Banos, right? So for those viewers that don't know what that means, that they don't speak Spanish, Baños is bathroom, restrooms preferably, if you're going to be a little bit more appropriate.
But you're going to build a whole line of bathrooms.
Yeah, well, we're going to tell them about it later, yeah. And then Juan, right?
Yeah.
You grow up with a Hispanic name, which so happens to translate to John, which represents the bathroom.
Bathroom.
I was literally just made fun of because of my name, and then you add, a little bit of culture. But I did grow up in a pretty safe area, Glendora, which is more of like a suburb. But things are still stacked up against you. So I think what that does, it almost forces you to have hunger, to say, wait, but I'm not different, right? How can I prove to everybody that I'm not different? So it starts there at a young age. So for everybody that's watching this and says, hey, I can relate to that story. Like, I'm starting off with disadvantages that I can't control. I can't control that I'm not Hispanic or that I'm not white or that I'm whatever that may be, right? So I think I just need them to try to channel that into motivation to say, okay, prove those points, because life's going to get tougher, right? And then you're going to get out and things are going to get stacked and you say, no, you're supposed to do this, you can't do this, and you just got to start breaking some barriers down.
One of the things that I admire about you, that I've seen you do such a good job of, is you balance having a really big, fast-growing company with having a wife and 2 kids. Like, I think one of the biggest conversations that comes up with entrepreneurs is work-life balance, integration. Some people say it doesn't exist. Some people say there's no actual line between the two. How do you do such a good job of balancing a huge company with, I think hundreds of employees, growing tremendously, probably on track to have 1,000 employees soon, and having a wife and 2 beautiful children? How do you integrate? How do you find balance?
Well, that's such a great question because I get asked that quite a bit. It's like, how do you juggle it? I'm going to start with, I consider it one life, not to take Gary Vee's, quotes, but one life is real. Like if you sign up for the world of being an entrepreneur or a business guy, like you don't want that security of just that 8 to 5. When somebody says, how do you balance it or when do you shut it off? My question is like, shut what off? What am I supposed to shut off? Because as we sit here today and have this interview, I am still a husband and I'm still a father, right? Just because I'm out making deals doesn't mean that I'm not a husband or father. Or when I'm home, and sometimes they actually pay the worst consequences for it, that we're eating dinner and I still have to pick up my phone, but I'm still an entrepreneur. I'm still a business guy. So I would dumb it down to look, I don't think in this space, if you want to be an entrepreneur, I think there's respecting time, so if I'm going to sit with my wife, I need to be present, absolutely, with my children present. But, Simon Sinek says lead with your why, and we've now done that, right? We've figured out what it is for the business, but I start with my family, and we exist to champion people's values and purpose, so they're empowered to build a life of significance. What does that have to do with construction? Nothing, right? And I start with my family. I need to champion my children's values and purpose, my wife's values and purpose, so they can build a life of significance, build a legacy, because that's all you're taking with you, man. You ain't taking these nice suits, and you're not taking that Rolex with you. You're going to build a legacy. Yeah. So we've rolled that out into the business in an industry that so desperately needs it, right? The world of building, I call it the behind-the-scenes infrastructure badasses that nobody talks about, that nobody sees. It's subconscious. Yeah. Because of it, we're having this interview here today, and there's infrastructure around us. But it goes unseen. There was a person here that you didn't know that was working blood, sweat, maybe tears based on what they were going through to put these walls up and to make this stuff happen. Yeah,
you look at everything, you're like, somebody built that, somebody built that.
I can't unsee it. My dad used to tell us that. We'd go to funny story, we'd go to like a urinal somewhere in a restroom and he'd be like, you see that tile? Yeah, we'd go to a baños. Nice. But he'd say, hey, you see that tile? Like somebody put that up there with their 2 hands. So for me, that's the world I lived in, different than obviously your space. Yeah. So I just want to champion the crap out of it, right? I want to make sure those people know that they're significant because it's really hard to find significance when you're pounding nails in 2x4 wood all day, right? Yeah. You're just kind of like, it's just a job for you.
One of the things that I think you made was the jump from being a recovering attorney now, right, to jumping into the entrepreneurship space. And I think that leap of faith, that jump of cutting the ties from a safe, secure job, or I guess that's not really the case nowadays, but you get my point. People have this illusion that a job with a company is safe versus starting my own business. What is your advice for the person who's tuned in listening right now and they're saying, I want to start my own business so bad, especially right now in today's world, but I don't know how to get started. I'm afraid. I don't maybe even have capital or connections. What do you tell that person?
Do it. Ask a lot of questions. Surround yourself around people that have. Because if you haven't done it, somebody has done it. And maybe they haven't done it to the scale that you're imagining that you can do, but start asking those questions.
So get a mentor is what I'm hearing.
100%, okay. Right? Get somebody to mentor you. And keep in mind that mentorship, that advice, I always say all advice is unsolicited, right? Unless you really want it. But there's good advice for when you're starting businesses. And if you're asking the right questions and you get it from enough people, you'll mold yourself to be the business person that you want to be. Remember, you only have one life to live, right? You say, YOLO, you only live once. It's not true. You only die once. You live every day. So if you want something, it's not going to come to you. Unless you're a trust fund baby, which that's a whole separate conversation because I still have a lot of empathy for them. Yep. You have to go get it. Period. No questions asked.
And I think a lot of people struggle with that, though, is the need or the desire that some of us have to want to know that we did it by ourselves. I don't want help. I want to do it myself. And one of the things that I admire about you, because I'm in the same boat, is I always want a coach. I always want a consultant or a mentor. You look at the Michael Jordans, you look at the most successful athletes, business people, they have a coach in almost every area of their life, from health to mindset, to nutrition, all the way up to business. They have coaches in all areas. Some people are afraid to get help, coaches and consultants. Something that you've done a good job of is you always find a team member who's smarter. You always find some outside resource to bring in to help the company. So what do you tell the person who's out there listening and they say, you know, I haven't ever had a mentor in my life. I've never bought a program or a course. What do you tell the person who feels like they need to do it by themselves?
Well, first off, that person, more than likely, the problem is they're not going to put their ego aside. I want to do this all by myself. Will never happen, period.
Yes.
I will not scale my business to $100 million by myself. I have not got where I am today by myself. I've done nothing by myself. I haven't had my own kids by myself. You don't do anything by yourself. I would say put your ego aside. Your ego is not your amigo. And start listening. Because at the end of the day, your biggest critic is you and your biggest fan should be you. So put it aside, start asking the questions, join courses. I mean, you've got an unbelievable course for anybody wanting to get started. You and I are working on something that may help a lot of these people get started. But I think you need to find those programs. They're out there. You have access to them. And with the internet now, you can get them like that.
And a lot of the stuff is free. Books are basically free, and they're cheap enough where even if you have a small budget, and you can follow people on YouTube and join their newsletters. So much information, at least enough information to get started, to make money and get the first roadmap set up is there for free. And then when you make a little bit of money, you can invest. At least that's what I tell people.
Sure.
You know, one of the things that I like to ask people on the show is a lot of the times, whether we're aware of it or not, we live by a quote. We live by a saying, you know, this too shall pass. When bad times come, this too shall pass. Like the crazy time period that we live in right now, I try to tell people if they're struggling, you know, this too shall pass. Whether it's a year from now or a decade from now, this is going to pass. If you're healthy, if you're alive, there's so much opportunity in the world. Do you have a quote, a mantra, a saying, whether it's in your company plastered on the wall or just something that you just internally, it's just your own little mantra or saying? Do you have something like that that helps you?
I do, and it's maybe because of my culture and our heritage, and so I have like an obsession with bulls because of this. And so
do you have a red little?
I'll show you later. But mine is life's a bullfight, be a matador. Right? And that philosophy seems weird, but the reality is that's kind of the way I've seen things over the last at least decade, if not a little bit more. Like I walk into a bull rink every morning when I walk out that door of my house, right? Life is a bullfight. The bull represents those challenges and those fears that you may have and is a lot bigger than you and can kill you. Right? So, but the matador is smarter, right? And can, through strategy and the right moves, you know, kill the bull. I know that sounds kind of graphic now, but if you really think of that concept, and really the only people in that rink are you and the bull, right? There's nobody there helping you. There's a crowd cheering, which by the way, maybe half of them aren't cheering for you. They're cheering for the bull.
That's reality, right?
Right? But, and you may have support staff that's there to say, hey, open the door when you're running out, but the person in that rink is you and the bull. Right? So life's a bullfight, be a matador. And to touch on what you said, you know, yes, we get past everything. Everything is temporary. Sometimes people are looking for permanent things, right? That's why, like, I think it's human nature to say we want permanent companionship or we want permanent this, but everything's temporary. Some things just are way longer in their temporary state than they are, you know. So, but yeah, that's basically it. So we'll go to Spain and we'll run with the bulls together.
We'll capture that as some B-roll when we get that. Brother, look, we could chat for hours, as you know, and I'm sure we will on the way out of the studio here. But what I want to do is I want to give people an opportunity to learn from you, to connect with you. Yes. If they're inspired, as I am right now, do you have a website you want to send them to, social media? Is there any place that people can go and follow you?
Well, thanks to you and your efforts with personal branding, I am now on, you know, Instagram, you know, so Juan J. Banos. And then I've had the LinkedIn. But yeah, I use those, and it's so important to stress that they are now, that's the way we're headed. So
you got to be online.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been saying this for a decade, and I'm just so grateful that we're crossing paths again at a time where that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Juan J. Banos, Instagram, Juan J. Banos, and I'll leave it at that.
Cool, brother. Appreciate you for coming on the show.
Man. Appreciate you.
I'm Mark Lack, and this is another episode of Business Rockstars.